Well, howdy out there. It's David Duford here at DeFord Insurance Group. Thanks so much for being here. We're doing it live today. The topic today is a discussion of the worst final expense leads. I like doing these types of videos here and there just simply because a lot of you out there on my subscriber list and those of you watching are in the final expense business. And there's a lot of vendors out there saying their leads are the best. And a lead is not a lead is not a lead. In other words, a lot of vendors claim that leads are all the same. And while there's certainly opportunity in any lead, I don't believe the quantity or quality of the lead is always the same regardless of where the lead comes from. So the purpose of this video really is to peel back the layers of the onions to give you my perspective as somebody who has been an agent since 2011, specifically in the final expense field. I've trained more than 3,000 agents since 2013 in person and over the phone. And we've dealt with all sorts of different kinds of lead vendors and lead options out there. And what we're going to be talking about today, what I think are the least quality leads out there. In other words, the worst. Again, what you guys have to understand here, and this is specifically speaking to you all out there who are brand new. The leads business is kind of like the used car sales business. There's a lot of con artists out there that are trying to take your money and provide little to no value in return. They know what to say to convince you to buy from them, but you don't know any better because you're ignorant. I mean that in the most highly respectful way that you could say that you're ignorant. When I say that, what I mean by that is simply put, you just don't know what you don't know. And there's a cycle of agents that come into this business that are told the things they want to hear. Like, here's the good leads. They just throw their checkbooks at you. And they're cheap, everything you want. And many agents end up failing out of the business, not just because of the lead situation, but because of that, there's other circumstances too as well. But many times getting the wrong kind of leads is like the first step to circling the bowl and being flushed out of the business, which of course we don't want. But with that said, as we go through this list of leads here, understand there are agents who can take any kind of lead and close them. So I'm not saying that these are non-closable type of leads, but these are leads that, in comparison with other kinds that are out there, are the least highest quality, and you're likely going to see the most issue and have the most frustration from them. So please consider, as we watch, hitting the like button to share this content or allow the YouTube algorithm to share it to other final expense agents who desperately need to see this. Angela, thanks so much for being here. Tim and Seth, thanks so much. Appreciate y'all's presence and watching this live. So let's talk about, first of all, the first one on the list, and these are all in no particular order. These are just kind of a list of leads that I really don't like. All right, so the first one, it's called banner leads. Now, some of you out there are a part of a certain marketing organization, and these may be leads that are originated from a CRM or an instantaneous type of lead. If you work for an organization that works with the kind of lead that is described that way, you probably know who I'm talking about. What are these leads? Well, these are leads that are generated from data. Very cheap, very inexpensive data. And they're not the highest quality. I don't know exactly how they're generated, but every time I've heard agents buying these type of leads, whether through said marketing organization or through other independent channels, what the agents can get them, pretty much everybody I've ever talked to says these are the worst type of leads possible. They generally retail in the $10 to $12 range, and they're what I would call like a notch above a cold call. I wouldn't say they're as low quality as a cold call, though there's probably people who debate that. But the actual experience of working these banner leads or these digital type leads is that they are not the first person to call. A lot of agents complain that other agents have called them already within that short period of time. So it's not even really an exclusive lead. It's a resold lead. And in many cases, it's aged. Maybe they requested the information not instantly, but many weeks ago, sometimes months ago. And it's many people going after the same prospect. And what many people find is that process is just debilitating mentally, psychologically for the agent, and very frustrating. And you may wonder, why do these MLMs out there sell these kind of leads? What is in it for them? Why would an agency want to promote an instantaneous lead or a lead originated from a CRM if ultimately the quality was very low? Well, I can give you a couple of reasons why. And I think the big one is there's a huge profit motive from using and reselling these leads. You can buy these leads from an original or an aggregator for very cheap. And then what's done commonly is these leads are made out to be the best of the best because you can get them in a huge quantity, but again, the quality is suspect. But then they're retailed at a higher charge beyond what it was acquired at. And what an agent pays for in the $9, $10, $12 range, they actually originated it for $2 or $3. So what happens is these MLMs have a huge financial profit push to push the leads to the agent that even though they're a low quality, they can get them in large quantity and make it seem like there's a lot of opportunity and make money on the sale of those leads. And then you're left holding the bag thinking, what did I buy? These are crap. And that's many times the circumstances a lot of agents go through when they use these. And so the problem here is that these leads are just incentivized. The MLM in question here, for example, makes a ton of money reselling thousands and thousands of these leads over and over again. Beyond just the sale of the policies, which they monetize, they also monetize the leads as well, make a killing off of it. So again, why do they do this? Because not everybody's going to make a sale. A lot of people join any organizations, it doesn't really matter. And the vast majority of people never even take step one, which is buying leads. They may buy leads, but never getting out there to sell on the phone or in person. And so the theory goes for a lot of these large MLM-focused insurance agencies is we'll monetize some profitability off of them even if they don't do anything. And so there's a big incentive to push something on which they can make money from up front even if they don't sell a policy. And for me personally, I never liked this idea, guys, because that at best muddies the water. Right? Because now the MLM is and the agency's focused on how can I make money off of an agent, not through the process of teaching them how to sell and be successful, but out of the process of selling them an overrated lead that I can get money up front and even then they won't sell. So again, when you see these kind of leads, understand that's the incentive behind selling them. You can get them in large quantities, sure, but the quality is nothing like some of the other options out there. And remember, who benefits from this? Well, the agency selling them largely benefits through a huge profit motive in selling them to you, to the tunes of probably millions of dollars a year in profitability just from the sale of these junk leads. So bottom line, don't do these leads. There are plenty of better options. These are probably the worst on the list here as far as quantity goes or quality goes, and I would highly recommend something else instead. Yes, we do have live transfers, Bill. We originate them from web data that are called from a US-based call center and then transferred live. They're pretty good. And any questions you have as we go through this list, feel free to throw them in the chat. If you're watching a recording of this, throw them in the comment box. I'll reply to those personally as well. So that was lead number one, banner leads. Just stay away from that garbage. It's nonsense. There's a lot better options out there. Number two, age leads of any type, especially digital leads. Now, like I said, an agent can buy age leads and do very well with them. However, generally speaking, age leads do not have the same quality opportunity as a fresh lead. Again, the stress, if you get the right kind of age leads, in many cases a direct mail type of age lead, especially unworked, those are really the best, maybe within 6 to 12 months old. Those tend to be the best opportunity, but generally speaking, age leads just aren't going to be as opportunistic as a fresh lead would be. Why? Well, because when you buy an age lead, their interest had peaked at the culmination of requesting that information. And time has a way of lowering interest and urgency, right? We've all been interested in something really quickly all of a sudden, and then once we satisfied that interest, or if nothing ever happened, it just kind of just flounders off, right? And that does happen in the insurance space. More often than not, what tends to happen is when you buy an aged lead, they've already been sold or they've already been dealt with. So you're already up against a lot of headwinds of getting in the door. Not impossible to do, and you should be trained on how to do that. But again, it's not going to result in the same outcome as fresh leads that are exclusive to you that have never been resold. So if you do age leads, kind of some pro tips here. Number one, I don't really like digital age leads. There are vendors out there that sell these digital leads for a couple of bucks that were generated 90 to a year or two ago. Very low quality lead, almost as bad as banner leads. Not something I'd recommend. If you do want to buy age leads, my recommendation is to buy direct mail age leads. Again, preferably unworked, meaning they've never been sold before. Most of us are only going to have access to worked age leads, which is still good. And one of the best ways to work them, beyond door knocking the leads, because a lot of people you'll call, their phones are disconnected or they're out of minutes and you got to wait. Door knocking is the best way to get in front of them. But one other way to get the most out of age leads is to send a refresher letter. So that's basically where, like what we do at DeFord Insurance Group, we send them a refresher letter. It's a template. The agent fills their information out. They send it in the mail to each of the leads. Says something to the extent of, hey, you sent this card back. Sorry we're late. We're going to be stopping by your house sometime this week to deliver the information you requested. And then you just proceed from there and just door knock them. And by the time you get there, they've seen your mugshot in the letter. Hopefully it's not a real mugshot, professional headshot. And I remember you. And of course, they're going to read it because it's a handwritten note. All handwritten letters get open and read at least. So bottom line, this gives you a leg up on converting some interest out of those leads and at least starting a conversation. And for many of us, that's all we need, right? Is just to start a conversation. And this can help you out tremendously. So that's if I'm working age leads. That's one of the things I would definitely recommend. But otherwise, I don't like to run a full-time, long-term strategy exclusively based off of age leads. No, actually, Miles, good question. Is this mainly for face-to-face? No, this is for telesales. So we talked about the banner leads earlier. That's for face-to-face or telesales. Age leads pretty much is predominantly for face-to-face. It can be for telesales. But now we're going to move to telemarketing leads. So these are the biggest, probably biggest problematic leads that are out there. And when I say telemarketed leads, I'm talking about leads that are originated from some kind of call center that they're called on, they're generated, and then in most cases you call them back or they're transferred to you. But the key to telemarketing is that they were cold called, okay? These are probably the most litigious types of leads to get. There are literally a professional group of professional litigators that are waiting for you to cold call them or for the call center to cold call them. And they know how to basically create a paper trail or digital paper trail to prove that you called them without prior authorization, without an opt-in permission. And how do they do that? Well, they know these call centers in many cases are located internationally in Pakistan or in the Philippines or something like that. And many of them could care less about federal regulations of not calling the do not call list. They'll call them anyway. And when they're called, they know they're not going to be able to sue Joe Blow's call center in Pakistan. So instead, they come after you. And they allege that because the originated call was illegal and you called them, and you should have known better, that you owe them $5,000. And that's how it starts. Usually it's a back and forth settlement in the $2,000 to $4,000 range, depending on how well you can negotiate. But there's a whole cottage industry of professional litigants that do exactly this across the country, and it's growing. Simply put, because the call volume of spam calls has gotten so bad that some people are turning it into a business model and basically collecting. And it's very stressful. It's a very big deal. And if you're not aware of this, now you are. And this is the biggest reason that personally I stay away from telemarketing vendors, generally speaking, across the board. What you don't want to do is respond to one of these folks that are international. They say, I need to sell leads. I've got 100 people ready to call. We're ready to work for you. Some of you probably gotten those LinkedIn messages like I have. It's like a daily thing for me. They may be good people. I don't know. But there's no federal risk of somebody federally coming after them because they're outside of U.S. jurisdiction. And so you're putting your business completely at risk with a group of people that frankly just don't care about the law. And I've heard some other things through the grapevines that some of these organizations share your data, share the leads that are generated. They just don't care about the efficacy and quality of your business. And to me, it's just a veritable hornet's nest of problems, including litigation and others. Again, for example, there's an agent I know that it was corporately appointed. He bought one of these lead vendor options through one of these foreign generated lead systems that cold call. And he called a vendor, the first couple of prospects or leads that he had was a professional litigant. They accused him of making 5 illegal telemarketed calls, something like that, and he was alleging a lawsuit of $40,000 to cover the claims. And this has been going on for like 3 or 4 months. It was just one couple of calls in the beginning, and this litigant wants $40,000. And it just drags on. It stresses you out. It's going to be expensive. You're not going to pay for it, even somewhere in the middle, to make it go away. And you don't need that kind of existential issue coming into your business just from a stupid lead. So my recommendation, generally speaking, is just stay away from any kind of cold call generated lead. It is not worth, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. There's no guarantee that you won't be sued. Maybe only if you're given some kind of indemnification where the vendor says, yes, any lawsuits, here is in writing, we'll cover you. That's kind of what I would demand, but I wouldn't accept that from a call center that doesn't have a state US-based presence. Otherwise, so what? What are you going to do? Come get me? I'm in Pakistan, right? So, but really, truly, the answer to this is just stay away from these type of leads. I would stay far, far away. There's plenty of other options. It's too bad because telemarketed leads used to be fantastic, really between 2010 and 2015. But the litigation has really stepped up. The restrictions have really clamped down just because the user experience of using the phone is terrible, right? I mean, you got calls coming in constantly. You just get bothered all the time, and that's kind of why it's been that way. And that's for every American. It's just that's a bother. So my advice is just to walk away from that, do another kind of lead where you don't have this litigation risk. Now, the last bad lead, or worst lead, I guess you could say, is what I would call a generic, is a generic Facebook lead, okay? So Facebook has gotten more and more difficult over the past year or two. I made a video about it a year or two ago about I'm through with Facebook vendors. Generally, that's been true with the exception of a few that we've had really good results with at the Ford Insurance Group. But generally speaking, the challenge with Facebook in generating leads is that because there's so many more agents in this business, and because so many of them want fast leads, quick leads, and cheaper leads, they tend to migrate towards digital marketing versus, say, direct mail. And what happens with Facebook is that Facebook's interested in making money off of ad revenue, and they just retarget any sort of marketing attempt that you make and show people who click on ads to burial insurance, let's say, to like-kind people, or they show different vendors, I should say, different ads that are related to that particular vendor. And so what happens is a person who clicks on an ad is going to see more ads of the same type, and the outcome to all of this is that your client gets inundated with advertising. And what happens at the end of the day is because of that, the lead quality is lower. They experience more inbound calls because of it, and they tend to not to pick up the phone as much. And all of this has led to what I think is a lowering quality of Facebook leads in general. Not just in quality, but the price point. There was a point 3 or 4 years ago, we could get Facebook leads face-to-face retail for $15 to $16, and they were pretty good. Now it's about double, okay? The big thing you got to be worried about, and I'm not completely castigating Facebook leads. I think that when they're done right, buying them can be very effective. But a lot of people don't think this is the case, or they're not aware of this, so I want to kind of describe what I mean by that. First of all, in my agency, we do use Facebook leads either on a face-to-face basis or telesales. And the thing you got to understand, guys, is if you're going to do a Facebook type of lead, you have got to buy in large volume, okay? It's not enough anymore to do telesales full-time with 50 Facebook leads. That's not going to cut it because a lot of them just won't pick up the phone. what I recommend to agents is that if you're going to do full-time, you need to rapidly scale up to 100 plus Facebook leads a week to make this business even viable. There's an element of having the numbers in your favor to making, and in this case, final expense telesales work with a digital type of outbound lead. If you're not willing to buy the large quantity required, you're going to have a very difficult time overcoming the quality issues that are mentioned earlier. And then for face-to-face, I like to have agents purchase 40 to 50 leads a week if you're full-time. You might need to get a little bit more, but that's a kind of a good place to scale up to as well. The point is, if you cut short on the Facebook investment as far as quality or quantity of leads, you're going to have a real hard time getting to the bottom of every single opportunity that there is. So make sure that if you go the Facebook route, like a lot of you are, understand that there is a big impetus for having the quantity in order to make that type of system work. Without the quantity, and we're talking quantity, like I said, 50 face-to-face, 100 plus over the phone. Without that quantity, you're not going to get the kind of results that you want. A couple of things, too, that are important. If you're looking at vendors to buy Facebook leads from, make sure that they generate the leads from some kind of landing page. Typically, the lower quality Facebook leads are generated in Facebook. The better quality ones are delivered to a landing page. They're required to fill out the forms manually. They're asked several different questions to help further qualify them, to help their recall rate, to help them be more engaged. All of this stuff helps them actually remember doing it and hopefully more likely express their interest. So I tend to recommend that versus, just in general a cheap lead that's just a name to talk to. Let them be qualified a little bit more. I think that's a better thing. And the last thing I'll add here is you can do it yourself. Sometimes that's a viable option. Basically creating your own Facebook marketing system to create interest and funnel leads into your system so that you can call and kind of knock out the middleman and start to control what the lead says and the quality of it. And one of the issues anytime you buy any kind of leads from a vendor is you're kind of stuck with a homogenous type of lead that works in all situations. And a lot of the time these vendors frankly don't show you what they're doing. So you never know really what you're getting. So there's always that quality issue with any type of lead that you buy from a vendor. You can eliminate some of that doing it yourself, but again, like all things in life, there's good and bad. And doing Facebook marketing on your own, the problem is that you've now required yourself to do another task. You now have to be a professional at Facebook marketing on top of a professional at selling. And kind of doing both of those simultaneously is very difficult in the beginning, harder than you might imagine. Plus, there's the issues that come with Facebook marketing. Is your ad going to be accepted or rejected from Facebook? Many times people have complained to me that their ads, they've submitted them for approval, they get rejected. There's no reason why. There's no explanation. It drives people mad. And it's not just like the one and done George Foreman grill easy solution. You have got to know how to make that stuff work and be totally committed to it. One of the things I will mention, stay tuned for those of you on my YouTube channel, also on my email list. I'll be rolling out a program here in the next couple of weeks where we're going to offer a done-for-you Facebook marketing system to anybody who's interested, where basically we design the whole Facebook marketing system for you. All you have to do is just basically run the ads, tweak them, based off of the performance. It takes a lot of that tedious setup out of the equation. So if you guys are interested, let me know. One of the biggest complaints that I've been hearing from people when they do courses is getting through the course. It's this very tedious process. A lot of people it drives nuts, but this should help a ton. So make sure you stay tuned on that. So that's Facebook. Again, kind of rounding this out here. I've talked a lot about what are the bad leads, what are the good leads. Let's talk a little bit about that just to end it, and then I'm going to catch y'all's questions in the chat. So make sure you throw your questions in there now. If you'd like to ask me something, happy to help. Bottom line, guys, if you're going to do final expense, my recommendation, if you're face-to-face, you got to do direct mail. There's a gentleman at a very large MLM that mass recruits. He spoke at one of my events in recent time, and he was one of the top producers in their particular top agent echelon. And of course, what does he do for final expense leads? He doesn't buy the leads that come from the CRM or the instantaneous leads. What does he do? He buys direct mail leads. which stands in opposition to what the company pushes down every single agent's throat. And I think that's kind of moral of the story. When you're doing some kind of direct mail lead system, you're going to find, and when on a face-to-face basis, we'll get to telesales in a second. When you do some kind of direct mail lead system, the quality and the experience is a night and day difference. I've seen this time and time again. Yes, it takes more money. Yes, it's more expensive. Yes, it takes some time to get the leads back. But the difference in the clients that you deal with and their willingness and intent to buy is a night and day difference. So my advice to everybody here, do what I did when I first started in the business in 2011. Figure out how to buy the best leads possible. You don't want to be in a position to where you give yourself the advantages of great training, you give yourself the advantage of a great mentor, you give yourself the advantage of great carriers, but you completely fall flat on your face because you opted to get the crappiest leads in the face of the planet. That is not how a smart business person runs their business. You're a business person now. You have to make sure the leads are slated in your favor, just like every other component that we mentioned earlier. Leads are no different. You have to take it seriously. And then for telesales, what I would recommend for telesales is unique in the sense that the best options are on a particular type of lead. It's just a lot of leads. Again, for me on the Facebook side or on the telesale side, Facebook leads are good enough. What I see, and again, the difference being is not some unique type of Facebook lead that just crushes everything else. I've yet to see that. They're all kind of the same to me if they meet the kind of basic criteria mentioned earlier. But the real difference maker is volume. You've got to do enough volume on Facebook lead generation to have a chance and success in selling final expense over the phone. The other side of that is a good live transfer vendor, be it something like a TV lead or a legitimate live transfer solution that doesn't rely on foreign elements, maybe generated here at home off of opt-in data, not cold call data that likely is DNC non-compliant. Live transfers can be great if it meets those basic criteria as well. And likely, just like that, it's a quantity game as well as a quality game when it comes to the leads. So that's where I would direct you guys. Whether you work for me, you would be directed in this direction, working for Ford Insurance Group, absolutely. If you're not with me and you're with another organization and you're not happy, consider working with me. I do accept and work with agents who may be with somebody else, not just brand new, as well as experience. But even if you don't decide to switch, you should be looking at options that are in this direction. Because the other ones that you're using, if you're using any of this stuff that I mentioned earlier, you're going to run into a lot of problems very quickly. At best, if there's any opportunity in these leads, these are short-term solutions to a long-term problem. And the long-term problem requires fresh leads, direct mail, or large quantities of Facebook leads for telesales, or good live transfers for telesales. And you need a good vendor for that are fresh and exclusive. That's the long-term strategy. That's what made my business successful as a face-to-face agent, what makes a lot of our agents successful face-to-face or telesales, just having the good leads. Okay, so let's take some questions from the chat here. I'll kind of turn it over now to you guys. Big fan. Do you have your agents buy live transfers? Absolutely. Bill, we have a good live transfer vendor. We're always looking to add more too, but we've got a very good one using web opt-in generated leads, so they're compliant. They're requesting information on insurance, and we're following up with them, and the call center is statewide or state-based or based in the states. So it's got everything that I like to see. And I've known the guy, who owns the company for 10 plus years. Okay, Corey, ran into exclusive telemarketing leads that use offshore telemarketers. Sketchy stuff. Yeah. Also makes it harder for you to sell them when you call on a prospect. Yeah, Corey, that's less of a problem in my mind. But as far as selling the prospect, it's the generation of the leads and where they're originated from that's truly the problem, like we described earlier. Run far away. Do not do them. Hey, Tim, I called a few lead vendors and asked how the lead was generated. So far, I'm not getting a very clear answer, usually very vague. Yeah, so, Tim, that's a very honest question, like how do you generate leads? How do I generate leads direct mail? Well, we work with a third-party lead vendor. They buy a list of mailing addresses, print the leads, send them off, and they come back to you. You know, it should be very clear and straightforward that even a fifth grader can understand, right? Anytime that you start getting these kind of like esoteric, nebulous answers that sound like a politician, right? That's probably bad. So my advice would be to run, because if they can't be straight up with you now, how are they going to be straight up with you when it really matters, right? Hey, Sea Dragon, especially if you dial a wireless number, in order to call a wireless number, you need written consent. Yeah, exactly. So that's, again, and a lot of the times these people who cold call don't care. They don't care about that stuff like you or I would, because we're on the hook for being compliant, not some dude in the Philippines, right? Anthony, I run all my calls through the Federal Trade Commission for telemarketers do not call list, all of them. Yep. Yeah, and that's important to do. Now, it's okay to not do that if you buy leads. So let me, just for the sake of the audience, Anthony, help them understand. If somebody requests information, like in a direct mail piece, some sort of web piece where there's opt-in permission, like when you click a form, like on my website, if you go to my site and download some of my freebies, you'll see before you, it says, send me the free stuff. There's text at the bottom that says, by clicking give me the stuff now, the button, you give us permission to text, call, email you, and bother you with more stuff that we want to sell you, right? So that's what you need to see on every single kind of web-based opt-in permission form. And all of them that we work with have it, so it gives you that added protection against litigious claims. You're not going to get that with telemarketing. That's kind of the big issue there, because they don't care, as I've said many a times now. Hey, Aubrey, thanks for being here. Yeah, better late than never. You always have to change your ads. It's not one and done 100% with Facebook. Again, that's why it's a complex issue to self-generate your own leads on Facebook. It's just marketing, and that's true for any kind of marketing. When I was in personal training, I'm looking at an ad right now on the wall. It made me $150,000 in revenue in like 18 months. It was, 2 or 3 years. I ran the same ad not a million times, dozens of times in a couple of newspapers back in the day when that still worked. But eventually got to the point where everybody saw it and it got boring, and all good ads eventually die. And certainly the same thing here. But that's a responsibility you have to have that you're taking on. You can't just set an ad and it will always work. You always have to be changing it, challenging it, testing it, seeing for ways to improve. Corey, only 2 lead vendors I have had success with are my manager self-generated and the Google ad generated for $850 from an agency owner I know. Cool. Yeah. Is there a closing ratio you look for with Facebook leads? Because I can get leads for $10 to $50. Yeah, Aubrey, if it depends if you're face-to-face or telesales. I'm happy with a 5% conversion telesales, which sounds preposterous. You mean 95 people don't buy out of 100? Yeah, that's just Facebook leads. Hopefully 6 or 7%, 5 to 7% is the goal. On a face-to-face basis, around 10 to 15% would be acceptable. About double what I would get in telesales is my goal face-to-face. So that's where I would go with. How do you know it's a bad company again? Hey, Tarina, how you doing? For me, Tarina, and this is kind of how I teach agents to figure out if they're working for a bad agency, is just ask them some basic questions in a non-threatening, non-confrontational way. Like say, hey, I'm doing my research. I'm really interested in buying leads. Can you please explain to me how the process is that you generate these leads? And that's not so much what they answer, it's how they answer it, right? If the answer you get isn't specific, if it doesn't actually answer your question, then people are avoiding giving you the functional details that matter, right? Like some of these telemarketing people, right? So that's kind of just a good skill set to use whenever you're trying to vet people, because you want to work with honest vendors like you want to work with honest agencies. And asking basic questions, if they get agitated by your response or they cut you short or they're rude, this is an indication of how maybe you're asking good questions and realizing they can't play their normal tricks on you, right? And how they react and how their answer is should tell you everything about whether or not you should do business with them. That's kind of my point. Again, last couple of questions here. If you got them, throw them in the chat, and then we'll wrap it up here. Any tips on door knocking 3+-year-old Facebook leads? Final expense leads. Kevin. Hey, Kevin, what's going on? Real easy. Great question. So what if you have to work aged leads? What if you're in a position where you're not working fresh leads? How do you actually work them? When you door knock face-to-face or aged leads, here's the only tip you need to know. Treat them like they're fresh leads. The likelihood is very high with final expense prospects. They have sent in another card at some other time, either for final expense, maybe they sent one in for Medicare, maybe they sent one in for some annuity deal they got a free dinner out of, maybe they sent it in for some bath refitter, right? Like, people who fill out cards fill out a lot of cards. It's a behavioral pattern that they're accustomed to. And when you show up at the door, they can't keep straight all the cards they've sent off. Yeah, that's my signature. But when did I send this back? They're gonna think, yeah, I did do something in the past, and start to wonder if that actually is them. And again, like I said, they probably sent off another final expense card. So is it the one that was sent off 3 years ago or the one 6 months ago and nobody ever came? Either way, the point of a card is leverage, okay? It's to get an audience with the client. It's to get a sit down and a discussion to see if you can help them. So when you knock on that door, you do the same script as if they were brand new, nothing different. And what you'll be surprised to find is a lot of people who are still there, some of them are dead or have moved on or literally, will let you in. So don't change anything. Don't be like, hey, you actually sent this in like before coronavirus. That was a long time ago, man. That's going to show some disinterest. But if you say, hey, I just got this card back, you requested information about final expenses, you just did get the card, they're going to be like, did I do that? And then if you do a good presentation at the door to get in, a lot more opportunity. All right. Corey, always good to go with people you know and trust are local. Aubrey, I'm from the Telesales world, so thanks for the info. You're welcome. Corey said, lady I called had spyware on her phone, activating camera and stuff. How would you handle this? I'm trying to sell her at 6. Do not feel comfortable with a potential hacker on her phone. Are you selling her over the phone? I don't know what to tell you. Is that what she says she's got? Maybe that's a way to get rid of you. I don't know, man. Show up in person so you don't have to deal with the phone. I got you. Thanks so much. I'm thinking of starting with live transfers. Yeah, Tarina, we really like them. Personally, if I were back doing if I was in a position where you took everything away from me and I can only do final expense telesales, I would personally do transfers all day long. I'd get as many transfers a day as I could, as many hours a day as I could. If the schedule was 9 to 5, I'd do 9 to 5. If it was 9 to 7, I'd do 9 to 7. And I'd sit down there and pay the price to get as many live transfers as possible. I just think it's so much more advantageous to have the calls come to you versus you doing the calls. Now, some people don't think that way, and that's fine. Some people love doing outbound. They're just great at it. They just want audiences. They don't care about starting phone calls and dealing with that stuff. They just want to get people on the phone, and they know if they have conversations, they'll close. And there's a little bit more control out of the process when you're doing outbound versus being at the mercy of the vendor, right? But in a perfect world where I could get the lead flow that I want, 40 or 50 transfers a week, I would definitely do that just because I'm in control. They're calling me with the interest. You're welcome. You got it. Corey, clients call me up as spam. Yeah. As an independent agent buying my own leads, what would you recommend as a budget per week? Good question. So if you're full, so I can only tell you, Aubrey, what I do with my guys and gals that join the Ford Insurance Group. If they're doing final expense, I want to see a budget in the $500 to $1,000 a week range to start. If they're part-time, $250 to $500. Why such the higher price? Why the range? Because looking at getting started, you've got to have the right amount of money up front to make this business a good run. This is not a business you want to start with no bankroll. And you've got to give yourself an honest chance with enough people to talk to, and therefore have to have the high enough budget to make it so. People who want to do full-time that don't have the budget, I usually tell them to save their money for a couple of months, do some side work, side hustle, right? Save up some money so you can give yourself an honest chance of yielding results out of this business. But many times that budget will go higher. Now, not initially, but eventually, as you start to scale up and do more work. Like, for example, one of the vendors we use for Facebook leads, their cost is $1,200 or so for 100. And that's okay because if an agent's growing to that point, it means they've had some success. All of this is to say, one of the nice things about final expense truly is that if you don't make sales in your first week, after you've get onboarded and you're doing well, this business is probably not for you. This is not a business like restaurants that take months or years to break even and develop a clientele. Being this is a one-call close business, you're either going to start doing well and start making sales right away, or you seemingly never do. So it's a business. Yes, it does require your investment, but it's a very quick turnaround business opportunity where you can test it to see if it actually is going to work for you. And I always think that's a good thing. Dylan, yeah, we've got good live transfer vendors, but we keep them private. We don't share live transfer vendors anymore publicly. I usually don't mind sharing vendors, but because because the situation with leads have gotten more difficult and trying to find good vendors, I always keep them now private for my agents. We don't share them. Are there any good direct mail lead vendors, or is it better to send out mailers? Yeah, I would look at lead vendors to look at direct mail. Don't do it yourself. It's kind of a very time-intensive task that's going to take away from what pays you, which is selling and seeing the people. So there's plenty. If you put in final expense direct mail vendors into Google, you'll find a couple that you can do business with. Corey, I do telesales. Might be best to send a field guy out and split the deal. I am a few states away from where I mainly sell, which is Texas. I'm in Iowa. Yeah, maybe. Lastly, when using age leads, Dylan asked, age lead store, what is a good age range to use? Just whatever your age range is that you want for the product you're selling, assuming final expense, the oldest that I can get is what I would use. Aubrey says, thanks. I've done telesales with the senior audience for quite some time. I'll definitely shoot you an email to see about your group. I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end it there. Hope you enjoyed today's broadcast. I'll have some content out tomorrow. And again, I invite you, if you're looking for a place to call home to sell insurance with, and you like the idea of remote sales, or you want to do face-to-face sales, we train on that for final expense, Medicare, annuities, and ACA under 65 health insurance. Just mosey on over to davidduford.com, click the FAQ button in the top menu, and then check out the links below the video to get more information about the different sales and marketing systems that we offer. And appreciate your time and attention. And we'll see you next week with some more live stream training. Y'all take care.